I'm actually on live on. So what is the official name?
Playing in traffic.
Playing in traffic. Awesome stuff. Come on.
Yeah, we play with everything. Gas, anything you put gas in, we play with.
So bikes, cars, go karts, off road, all of that, right?
Yes, sir.
That's
yes,
perfect.
Sir.
That's perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna go live here in our set, and we'll be live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So we'll be on all three.
Yeah, multimedia.
Hey Terry, why don't you introduce them?
You know I will.
All right, people.
Yeah.
We're in traffic, and we are live on YouTube. Where else? YouTube, Facebook, and
Twitch.
Twitch.
Yeah, there we go.
We got the boys in the house. Terry, what's happening?
Yo, what's
See?
going on, everyone?
I'm gonna say I'm right down there, right? Just like do the Brady Bunch thing, right?
This is upstairs.
Yeah, it's
You're
awesome.
Right on mine. You know, we got
That's
the
great.
cast of characters. Got Lewis Lee bringing it. You know, we got Ray Garrido.
Wait.
Radio.
I know where that is. That's down here, right? There we go.
Special guest, the Madman. And I'm going to explain to you why he's a madman. You're not going to believe it. My man Richard Holdner. Yo, say what's up to the people.
What's up, man? What's up to the audience? How are you guys doing? Happy, what? Today's Thursday, right?
Yes, sir. Hey, we appreciate you having you on, man.
Oh, thank you guys, man. I'm a big fan.
You know, we talked like 2 years ago about getting you on the show. Sorry it took so long, but you know,
That's-
Terry's all hogging up the space.
I was gonna say that's probably my fault, but I really like to blame it on Terry. I think.
Of course. Of course. You should have seen it when we went out to dinner. When I was in California, we went out to dinner.
Oh, that was awesome.
We were doing a live feed
Yeah.
on Instagram, and we must have been talking for about a good 20 minutes before we realized the camera wasn't on.
I forgot that we had to go back and re-talk about everything. But I was much better the second take, though.
This is true. Until you told me that I was having a Long Island iced tea instead of an iced tea.
Those are good.
Oh man, they'll put you down.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was just a regular iced tea.
Those are Long Island iced tea is no joke. You know that you're serious when you go and order that.
Yeah. Do it.
You know, I'll tell you a little secret about that.
Yes.
Growing up on Long Island, being in the bar at like, you know, it was like 17 or 18. It was the year that Long Island iced tea came out, and I think I was turning 18, and I was drinking age back then. So, you know, but we'd already been regulars in the bar for a year or so, and friends were just buying me iced teas all night.
Oh.
Like, yeah, nothing, not a problem. Until I stood up, or tried to stand up, and just
Yeah.
went right back down, and I guess someone drove me home that night.
So that's the thing. That's the key is never stand up. You just have to stay on your bar stool, and then everything will be okay.
Actually, I could have just sitting in my car in the parking lot, and they could have been serving me. They would have been good to go. I would have just driven home, and it would have been
Oh
good.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
did
Like
that back then.
Sonic. Do they roll up to you on roller skates?
That's it. Long Island iced teas are no joke. And when you go out, we used to go out. My buddy Harold and I, we would go out, and they would serve buckets of Long Island iced teas to the like clubs that we would go to. I'm like, man, this is this is definitely gonna get ugly.
So Richard, what do you have going on out there? You're in Northern California?
Yeah, I live in Northern California between Sacramento and San Francisco, and as I'm sure most of the people watching would know that I do all my stuff with the guys down at West Tech Performance. Shout out to Steve Brulé and Ish and Eric and Troy and Rick, the owner, for getting all that stuff done, because I've been going out there. It's got to be coming up on 25 or 30 years now, I think, and you know, it's just like everything. The first time I went there, after I showed up, I'm like, the first time I dynoed something there, I'm like, oh my God, I have so many questions. And I decided right then, that day, that I was not going to let them get rid of me ever. So I just attached myself onto it. I've been there ever since.
You know, since I started watching your videos, I didn't realize how much is entailed in actual dyno and just a regular engine before you put any add-ons on it.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing that people don't realize, and I'm sure for what you're doing too, you know, people see a video and they go, oh yeah, I could easily do that. That takes no time at all. It takes no effort. It takes no preparation. And what they see, just like when they saw, because all of this started when I was doing magazine stories basically. So, you know, you'd put together the motor and then you would test it and you'd write about, okay, this cylinder head did this or this camshaft did this. But they don't realize that all of the stuff up to that 2 pages or 3 pages of the story and the 10 or 12 or 15 photos that it took, you know, just like an endless amount of work that you have to do before you get that information. So, you know, it's like anything. It's a lot of work, but if you like it, like for me, I just live for the dyno results. So when I get those, I'm willing to do all the other stuff, go to the wrecking yard and lay underneath and, you know, have transmission fluid drop in your ear and stuff. All the stuff you got to do to make that happen. It's a lot of fun.
Right. That's a wonderful thing, man. Like I was telling you earlier, I love turbos. Terry.
Oh, yeah.
The
Cheers to turbos.
But man,
There's a supercharger.
you know, I like the whistle, man. And you hear that turbo.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I don't think the bus is going to fit on the dyno though.
Yeah, I got a smooth bus. I need you to tweak it for me. Tweak my turbo.
What school bus is it? A Bluebird? What is it?
Yeah, Bluebird International.
Oh, cool. What year is it?
03.
Nice. And so what motor's in it?
The DT 466E.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
So are you doing anything to it or just cruising around?
I'm turning into an RV.
Okay, nice.
We're gonna retire and travel.
Oh, that's perfect.
We'll be out there messing around with you too.
That'll be. I definitely want to ride in the bus then.
Oh yeah.
That's what I told him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming through.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and if it's big enough, I'll just sleep on the bus too. I don't even have to get a hotel room or nothing. That'd be awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's going to have a kitchen in there, a bed.
Shower, bath.
Dude, I'm in.
Yeah. Full blown house.
That'd be great. We can work on the motor while you're driving. That'd be perfect. Yeah, we'll turn the boost up. That'll be all good.
Yeah. I got a guy coming. I gotta get him to get the governor off. You know, he has the governor on it, so
Oh yeah.
if I can get to 75, I'll be good.
I don't know. You want to be doing too many high speed chases with the bus, but it, you know, certainly cool. You got to be able to go up those hills.
You gotta get into somebody. You know, they act up at the light. You might have to push
Hey,
them
you
away.
got to do what you got to do, right? Sometimes you got to.
Yeah, I know Lewis. He's gonna try to turn it up a little bit every now and then.
You got to. You got to make it your own, right? I mean, you know.
Yeah.
No, that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna ask Ray a question.
What?
About what's it called? I found the answer out because when we were talking about the last video I did where it was with the brackets for the Le Mans, I believe when the hideaway headlights at 689, they had a different bracket for the hideaway headlights itself.
Uh-oh.
Whereas the non-hideaway headlights and the Le Mans Tempest T37, whatever it is, they shared the same bumper bracket.
I would tend to believe that the Le Mans and Tempest with the
So what are you guys doing?
they all share the same brackets, yeah.
Yeah, so did the Enduro bumper with
Here, we'll move this up here.
the hideaway.
Yeah, they had headlights. Okay, I would go with that too, sure.
Yeah, so like I did a little research on that.
How's that? Is that better?
Okay.
Oh, I'm talking to other people.
Hey,
T37 for the win. I really like those. When I got a quick T37 story for you, I went to visit Dulcich at his place, and we were picking up a couple of motors that they were giving me because that's how I get all my best motors. If somebody gives them to me, they cast them off, and I think that they're gold. And so I took my two kids there to with me to get the engines and put them in the truck and take them back home. And they had a T37 there, and it had a broken window. And it had a price tag on it that said like, I don't know, $1,200 or $1,500 or whatever. My youngest son's like, Daddy, you should totally buy that. That's cheap. You should get it. I'm like, yes, I know I should. I don't think that they would take that for it though. But he was all in. He wanted to see a muscle car come home.
you know, I have a T37 story for you too.
Yeah, awesome.
It was probably 1974. I was in summer school on Long Island, and I was taking driver's ed, but I was taking another class too. Outside the window of the school, it was a different school. It wasn't the one I was in high school. It was a middle school. I guess one of the janitors or something had a brand, well, it was probably like a year old, 2 years old, T37 parked outside.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, but I'm like looking at the stripes, I'm looking at the Rally 2s, I'm like, yeah, that's just like a cool looking car.
Yeah.
You know, not a GTO, but it's what is that? You know, it's like seeing a heavy Chevy. You know,
Yep.
What the hell is going on? So it always stuck with me.
It's GTO-esque.
It is. You know, to the insurance company.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's potential.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's cool enough that that, like the right kind of guys that see it are going to know what it is, but a lot of people are not. So it's, it's that kind of car, and I really like those.
Well, yeah, it's like like the heavy Chevy. I mean, it's
Yep.
hard to play tight. You can't mistake it for any other kind of car.
Yep.
It is what it is. Yeah, I love when they played around with models like that. Just came out with, like the Rally 350 Olds. Another one.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
Insurance company beater.
Oh yeah. I like that they played those games.
Yeah, but I tell you, I always thought back in that era that Pontiac, like all across the board, Bonneville, Grandville, whatever, back then, with the exception of the Grand Prix, they all had like a sad look to them. It looked like they were crying a little bit. Like they were just very sad looking.
Because no one's paying attention to them. That's why they were lonely.
I can see we could come up with that. Yeah, I can see we could.
But the Pontiacs, the Pontiac side had all of the cool stuff though. They had better aerodynamics, they had better handling, they had all kinds of cool stuff. I remember hearing a really great story about the Pontiac stuff, and they took the cars. This is when they were running NASCAR, and they took the cars out and they ran them on the track. And the Pontiac went faster than the Chevrolet did. And then they swapped the motors, and they put the Chevy motor in the Pontiac motor in the Chevrolet, and then the Pontiac still went faster. And they're like, why is it doing that? And they found two things. One was the aerodynamics of the Pontiac at the time, and I can't remember which model it was because this was pretty early on. But the aerodynamics of the Pontiac was better, and the other thing that it had is the Pontiac had a cold air intake ducted to the carburetor. So they were actually taking cowl induction, basically, kind of like they eventually did on the 69 Z28s and on the LS6 Chevelle and those. But the Pontiac was drawing cold air, so its motor, whichever one it had in there, because they knew that the Chevrolet had a little bit more power than the Pontiac of the two cars that they were testing. But the cold air made the difference, and then the aerodynamics of the Pontiac were a little bit better too. So I thought I love these kind of stories.
I'm going to say that. One of the things I do is I read a lot of old magazines. I got them all over the place. I was just reading one upstairs in the bathroom, and it was adding they had like 101 tips. It was a hot rod magazine from I think the 80s or 90s, and one of them was about cold air induction, and they mentioned how Pontiac really only had the ram air engines, but you had the Trans Am scoops were fake.
Yeah.
The GTO had a fresh air intake, and they said it really anything that's in that plane of the hood. It's in the wrong
spot, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the wrong spot. So really the only car that they recommended, which I agree with, that had the right aerodynamics at the time was the Oldsmobile that picked it up from under the bumper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because they had the ducts going under, right?
Under the bumpers, right. So at least you're picking it up in that lower barrier. So yeah, I don't know what intake they were dealing with there, but.
Well, they were drawing air from the cowl basically, so they're routing the ducting back to the to the cowl area, which is the pressurized source when you're going at speed where the windshield is, and that's how your vents and all of that stuff work. So they were getting essentially some pressurized air. They weren't talking about that too much, but they were getting a source of cold air, and if you get cold air, it makes more power.
Now, I was going to say, if it was in NASCAR, they would reverse the air cleaner, and Chevy had the parts in the book with that. Well, I was going to do that with a couple of my cars.
Yeah.
Cut right into the firewall for the cowl, but you kind of need that long, wide accordion.
Yeah, like the Z28s were like that.
Yeah.
The 80,
Yep.
Even the Chevelle. That's why I went with a flat hood, even though it's
Exactly.
this thing, and it doesn't. It's more for show.
You got to have the flap hood, though. I mean.
Yeah, you gotta have the flap.
Yeah.
And but the real flap, what people don't understand, unless you have one, there were two doors.
One above and one below.
Right.
Yeah.
One on the hood and one below.
Yeah.
That was actuated like the 80 Z28, where the one on the hood was vacuum.
Yep.
The one in the back, that's electrical.
Okay.
And what's it called? So with the Z28, you had this little thing that stuck out, and you had a rod off the gas pedal. So when you got like maybe 3/4 of the way in,
yeah,
it would hook it up.
Like a nitrous activation switch, like a full throttle switch, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
You know what other one was cool is the Dodge or Plymouth had the air grabber that used to open up on the hood too, and they had a little the little drawing or something on the side of it that had a cool little face or something on it, right?
Shark tooth.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was on the Super Game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, good stuff.
You know, Matt Gobert was just saying he thinks that I think he's talking about what you're talking about was between the Chevy and the Pontiac was when they had the Aero Coupe. That was in the 80s. They had that Monte SS.
Yeah, they had the Monte Carlo. Yeah.
Oh, I think that was an idiot looking car. Those things were so funny. It was horrible.
I got guys running around my town here that's got those big wheels on them. They're just messing them up, man. I'm like, dude, you know what the car's worth?
Yeah.
The back glass by itself.
Oh yeah, that's got to be big money now.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll tell you what, the Grand Prix, 4 plus 4, 2 plus 2, that's what it was. It was Grand Prix 2 plus 2.
Yeah.
That was a better looking car.
Yeah, but you don't see very many of them though.
You don't see
Classier too.
Yep.
Inside, they had more luxury.
Yep.
Well, see, that's what it was. The Pontiac, that's the excitement, man.
Yeah.
That's the excitement.
Hey, John DeLorean did a good job when he was at Pontiac.
Yeah.
He was the man DeLorean.
He did good stuff.
He was the man DeLorean.
Yep.
Brian did just confirm that it was the Aero Coupe and the 2 plus 2 the 2 plus 2 car that ran faster.
Okay.
And I remember a buddy having a, geez, I want to say it was 73 or 74. I forgot what it was. 74 Grand Prix. That was like the second year when it went long.
Yeah.
That was the prettiest car, man. It was burgundy. It had a white Landau roof with a white gut sunroof.
It had the lights with the cross in it.
Like my 70 Camaro had, the one in the front. Yeah, those are cool.
Oh, let's not talk about 70 Camaros. Full spot on this.
That was my first car.
Mine was 75.
Nice.
You know,
My first one was a split bumper, but it was a rally sport, but it was a base car, so it had a 2-barrel motor in it.
that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Mine was an '88.
Nice. I still have my I have a 1988 5-liter Mustang that I bought new in November of '87. So I'm original owner 5-liter still. I still have the car.
That was a pretty fast car that year.
It was the first year of the Mass Air for California only in '88, and it was a stick, and I bought it with, I deleted almost everything. I didn't delete AC because I needed that, but I bought it so I could go showroom stock racing in SCCA. Right, shortly after that, they brought out the 1LE Camaro, which unfortunately was a much better car because I would go through brakes, I would go through rotors and pads, sometimes calipers, every race. We would just destroy them, and the 1LE Camaros would outbrake us without any problem at all. They were better cars, but I love the Mustang. It worked out good, and I still have it.
Hey, Rich, are you in the 200 club?
Yes, I went 227 in my Honda Civic, which to this day, as far as I know, is still the world's fastest Honda Civic.
Wow, that'd be scary.
The Civic actually is a front-wheel drive car at Bonneville is definitely the way to go as opposed to a rear-wheel drive car because it's such a loose surface that putting power down is very difficult. So if you have a rear-wheel drive car, the back end kind of wants to pass the front end and get a little crazy. But on a front-wheel drive car, the weight's over the drive wheel. We even had an open diff. We didn't have a limited slip or a quaff or anything. It was just a stock open diff, and the thing would just track like perfectly straight. And until we broke a half shaft at the 4-mile mark, and then things got exciting.
Much better than have a car that pulls than to push.
Yeah, it worked out a lot better. The back end's just like along for the ride. It's just like, hey, we're just doing our thing back here. Nothing's going on. Yep. Yeah, cool.
You need an Audi Quattro.
Oh, I do like those. Michelle Mouton. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
And all those little Group E cars, a Mazda 323 GTX, those are awesome. The Lancia Deltas, the little MG Metros. I got to ride in an RS200 up at a Virginia City hill climb that was all modified. I just love those cars.
Wow.
So what is your main car now? Like, I know you said you had a Mustang, but do you have anything else? Like
The one that I drive every day, and I get questions about this all the time because I do a lot of LS testing. Obviously, is I have a 2002 Chevy Silverado with a 5.3 in it that's all stock that now has 300,000 miles on it, and everyone's like, "Well, did you put a turbo on it? Did you do all this?" I'm like, "It has a 4L60E transmission. It's made of glass. I mean, I don't even want to put a cam in it because I know that I hardly ever even go full throttle in that truck because I know that I'm just waiting for inevitably something is going to break on it." But the other car, oh, go ahead.
When that day happens, what are you going to do?
I think buy a new truck. I have to have one car. Like, my wife has a new Mercedes, and so we drive that everywhere. But I have to have one car that I can use, that stays stock, that I can go pick everything up in. The other cars I have, like the Mustang, doesn't have an engine in it right now. It's been sitting for a really long time. I just bought the Dodge Omni GLH Turbo that has a modified 2.5 big turbo, intercooler, all that stuff on it. So the motor's hurt right now because I bought it that way. And so that's a little bit of a project. I also have a 71 240Z. Again, there's no motor in it. I bought it because I took the motor out of it because we were going to do a V8 swap. And I still want to do that, although I do have an RB25 sitting there that I also am going to do testing on. It would be perfect in that car. It would just look awesome. What else do I have? I have a 1996 F355 Spider Ferrari. That just sits under a cover its whole life, and I'm now probably going to sell it. And the only reason I have it is because I got such a good deal on it. It was like one of the least expensive cars I've ever bought. So it was such a good deal that and I've always wanted a Ferrari, and I drove it around, took my kids to school in it and stuff, and then now it just kind of sits, and I want to get something. I'd actually much rather now get some kind of driver muscle car, a 1970 Chevelle or a Camaro or even an old Challenger, and make it look like a TA 6-pack or that kind of deal. Something that we can drive and I could go out to date night with my wife in, because in that car, I can't afford to fix it. So if I drive it and somebody bangs into it or gets the paint scratch or whatever, I'm not a Ferrari guy, so I can't even fix it.
Well, I got parts of a Challenger if you want to start building one.
I really, really like the, first of all, I admire Dan Gurney. He was in every way, like 75 different kinds of awesome. I have a good story about Dan Gurney. I don't think that I've ever met him, but one of the guys from Osco Performance, Dennis Ozzie, was telling a story about when the people were over, when Dan was alive and he was over at All American Racers, that when he would walk into the shop and he would stop and talk to somebody and he'd start telling a story, that everybody there just dropped the wrenches and stopped what they were doing and then went over to listen to the stories that he was telling. Because, I mean, look what the guy's done. And if you ever read anything about him, that everything that everybody says is the guy was like, just the greatest kind of stand-up guy. He was an awesome driver. He was great to be around. He was just, he was the right kind of person. So, but one of my favorite cars is that, the AA Arcuda. So with the 6-pack on it and the TA 6-pack, the same kind of thing, just a Dodge and a Chrysler version of it. But I really like those cars.
Much rather have an AAR than a Hemi.
Oh, me too. I'm not a big Hemi fan. I know what they're worth and all that, but a 340 6-pack car would be much higher on my list than a Hemi Cuda would be.
Car too.
Yeah, I do. I really like it.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Did I show Uppity? They've talked about Dan Gurney.
I don't think so.
On Netflix about Willie Ribs.
Oh, Willie T. Ribs. Yeah, I raced with Willie, not with him, but when I was running World Challenge was the same time that he was driving in Trans Am. So World Challenge was a support series for Trans Am. So he was at the races and at the drivers' meetings and stuff when we were there. Yeah. Yeah, he was a good driver.
Oh no, he was so. The story's so sad. I mean, he just didn't get the opportunity.
Yeah.
But
no, he was the goods.
He was, yeah, and he loved Dan Gurney, and they talk about Dan Gurney a lot.
Yeah.
It's really cool because when he was a kid, he took a picture with Dan Gurney, right?
Yeah.
Come to find out that he raced for Dan Gurney later on in life.
See, that's all kinds of awesome.
Yeah.
That was kind of the neat thing about being there. Like I remember going to the Long Beach Grand Prix, which we went to a lot, and this was back when Little Al was driving, and this was kind of like his track. And I remember going there thinking, okay, next year I'm gonna race in this, not in an Indy car, but I'm gonna race in this. So I was running for with the guys from Bear Racing and World Challenge, and I ended up buying that car, and we put a supercharger on it, and I ran in the Bridgestone Supercar Series, which was a support series for the IndyCar guys that weekend. So I actually got to run at the Long Beach Grand Prix. So the cool thing about it was we were outmatched by the other cars that were there, and more than likely the drivers as well. But you do get to sit in drivers' meetings with, like, when I was racing, Paul Newman was driving one of the Lotuses. So you get to sit in drivers' meetings with guys like Paul Newman, who I'm not a big, I don't get googly-eyed over stars and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't get starstruck over that. But he was one of the guys that just, for me, was just, like, super awesome. But also, like, Mario Andretti and all those guys were there at the drivers' meeting. So you're like, this is so awesome.
Yeah. Mario's a very nice guy. Very nice guy. I like him.
Yeah, I've met him at SEMA, but I didn't get to talk to him that much. But he's he did everything. He was one of the guys that back in the day, like Parnelli Jones and all these guys, that just drove everything. They didn't care. He wasn't just an IndyCar driver. He was an IndyCar champion, a Formula One champion. So he did that, but he also drove everything. He drove USAC and midgets and just Can-Am and everything back in the day.
Yeah.
He was a real deal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
I talked to what's it called, Mr. Andretti. I call him Mr. Andretti because, like, anyone at that level.
He is Mr. Andretti, definitely. Yeah.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mr. Magic Johnson.
Yes.
And I talked to him, and I told him, I was like, flat out, I was like, I asked him, what's your favorite car? He goes, any car I can win in. He asked me,
Yeah.
the camera, what do you know any of my cars? I was like, I would have to say my favorite car that you ever drove was that Player Special.
Oh yeah, the John Player deal. Yeah. Yep.
I was like, I even still have the G Plus. It's AFX G Plus.
Yeah.
I still have the AFX G Plus. I love it.
Oh yeah, no, that's good stuff.
And then I went over to Richard Petty.
Another guy who could drive.
Those guys were real drivers because they didn't have the technology.
No, they had something special about them, that, not to take away anything from Lewis Hamilton or any of these guys, obviously, but what they were doing a lot of times was adapting to stuff that was thrown at them, and then because the car was less than 100%, let's say, and they would work around it, which was an amazing thing.
Yeah, and I remember seeing, I guess it was a couple of years ago, I forgot who the driver was, but it was a new NASCAR driver, and they pulled out on one of those old NASCAR, like a Dodge Charger, like how Richard Petty, the 43.
Yep.
And they allowed him to drive it around the track, and he was just like, I couldn't do it. He goes, once this car got to about 110, that was it for me.
Yeah.
He tapped out.
It really, and imagine, like, in some of those cars, like the Super Bs and stuff, they were going 200 in those cars, so that was pretty fast.
Yeah, with no power steering. And,
no.
They were working.
Yeah. Their power steering was big steering wheels. Yep. Oh yeah, I mean, guys like Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt, even later than Petty and stuff. Those guys were like real guys.
Yeah, the electrical tape.
Yeah.
I've been like seeing earlier NASCARs when these guys are on the beach.
Oh, the 50s.
Yeah. Daytona, yeah.
In Bel Air.
And they were in t-shirts with open helmets and smoking a cigarette as they
Oh yeah.
out the window.
Marlboros.
Well, you gotta look good while you're doing it, right? You can't just do it. You got. Yeah, that's.
No helmet whatsoever.
Yeah, no, that's.
It's like a skull cap.
A lot of them early on were just leather.
Football helmets.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts.
Couldn't do that, man. Even the convertible now, there's no way.
I don't even like when somebody else is driving, even when it has a top on it.
Yeah, me either.
I'm not a convertible man.
And that comes from, like, I did a lot of instruction. I did a lot of driving instruction, and it came from that. Like, when I was out on the track, and I could drive from the passenger, which confused a lot of people. So I could drive on the track from the passenger side, and a lot of guys can do that. It's not that big a deal. I would tell them, okay, look, here, start feeling it. You need to start turning in. Okay, here's your apex. Okay, now you can feel it. We want to start exiting out. We want to start exiting out. And we're doing that, and I'm telling them, hey, look, you can do this. This is not, it's not magic. It's not that hard. I said, just look at, see that rock right there? When you can't see that rock anymore, that's when you need to turn in, and then you need to go to right there and be looking at the big picture, and you tell them all of that stuff. But when I'm in the passenger seat, just driving around town, it's just, you know, I'm frightened beyond all belief. I do not like it.
You're out of control.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
Yep.
That's all good though.
Yeah. So did you guys see the a couple of the cool videos that I just posted recently? A couple of the cool tests that I did. Guys have been wanting me to do compound boost for a long time. So I did way back. I did compound turbo, so one turbo feeding another turbo on an LS, and I thought that was really cool. And I just did it as a gee whiz thing because I'd never done it before. I'd never done. You know what? I take that back. I had done it before. in my Chevy Sprint, we set some land speed records with this Turbo Sprint. So it made, I was making like 110 at the tire, and we went 119 miles an hour in the standing mile. And then we set 2 records, and we were getting ready to set our 3rd record, and then the clutch let go. So it started slipping, so we couldn't set our 3rd record. But then we were going to go to Bonneville, and we brought the car home, we're putting a cage in, and then somebody stole the car, unfortunately. I still have the motor for it, but somebody stole the car. So I was so disappointed because I love that car. But before they stole it, I did do some testing on a compound setup because the Sprint Turbo has a little tiny turbo, as you would imagine. I mean, it was rated at 70 horsepower with the turbo, so it didn't make a ton of power. So I took a Volkswagen turbo and then compounded those 2 on the chassis dyno to make that work. But then I did one on the LS, again, just more of a gee whiz thing. Not that you need to do that or that I would even recommend it on that application. It was just kind of cool to have 2 junkyard, you know, this junkyard motor with 2 cheap turbos blowing into each other and make lots of boost, make lots of power. And recently what I did was we took a junkyard 3800 Series 2 V6, the supercharged motor that's in the Pontiac Grand Prix or the Buick Regal GS, those kinds of things. And so it had a supercharger on it, and then we added a turbo to that. So we have the turbo blowing into the supercharger with an intercooler in between the 2, running on E85. And again, it's probably not what I would recommend a guy do, but we don't always do what they should do. We do what they want us to do, and those were really kind of cool tests, and people like that because it's, you know, it's boost on boost, and there's nothing a motor needs more than boost. Even if it already has some boost, it obviously needs more boost, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's it. That's the thing you wouldn't necessarily do to your own car
Yeah.
at home. You know,
Yep.
but you want to see somebody else do it.
And the nice thing on the dyno, it's easy to do too, so we don't have to ruin a car to do it, and you know, it takes a lot less time just to build it on the dyno, and everything fits.
Right.
Now, when you're at West Tech and you're doing all those dyno pulls, what is it? You guys got like a bunch of engines that you just have laying around? I mean, 'cause
I probably have, at any one time, I think that the most I've ever had is 21 or 22 different engines. And that sounds like a lot, except that if you go buy them for a couple $100 from the wrecking yard, you know, it's not a fortune. And so, and the nice thing is, those engines, if we blow one up, which has happened many times, you don't care about it. Like if I put together a brand new motor and it has forged rods and forged pistons and the best heads and all of that stuff on it, and then I put it on there, I almost don't want to run it, because that's the motor that I'm worried about is going to get hurt. If I go get a motor from the wrecking yard and the only cost so far has been that we put oil on it, put oil in it, like new oil, and it blows up, you're like, yeah, that's bad. But it's only $200 bad or $300 bad. It's not $10,000 bad, you know. So that's why I like junkyard motors so well. And the other reason I like them is because they've already run. If you put them on there and they're not hurt, and you know, like we try to look for crashed cars, so you know that the thing was probably running when they got in a wreck, and so the motor's probably good. So we put the motor up there and run it, and then when it's running, we know, okay, look, now we can add boost to it, we can add nitrous, we can do whatever we want and hopefully do it correctly and not hurt it. But again, if we do, you know, we're not out that much.
So we got a guy here, serious vet. He was like, Terry, Richard needs to test an LSA blower.
I do, definitely.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him. We had planned. Me and Richard
Yeah.
had planned to go to West Tech. I guess it was SEMA last year. Being that SEMA didn't happen.
Yeah.
I was gonna come out there like a week early or either stay a week late, and I was gonna send him one of my LSAs, full blown everything, and we were gonna spend a couple days out there just testing every single case scenario from, I guess a cam. I guess we could have swapped out that.
Oh yeah, a couple, more than one. Yeah.
More than one, to cold air, to pulleys.
All of it.
We're gonna go nuts.
Yeah.
We're gonna go nuts, and we're still planning on doing it.
I would love it because I get questions all the time. We run lots of supercharged stuff, like especially I did not too long ago. I did the inexpensive like eBay Cadillac turbo or supercharger and intercooler that people were selling with adapters. So we did that, but everybody, as soon as they saw that, they're like, oh yeah, that's really cool, but we need you to do an LSA because an LSA is readily available and it doesn't take adapters, and you can make all of that work. So they want to see that, and I'm curious to see how much power it will support.
So leave a comment, everyone.
Yes.
We're definitely gonna do that. I got the power. I got the tools. We got the knowledge.
That's
We
right.
got Richard. We just gotta send all the stuff out to Richard.
Exactly.
We're gonna even do how many different isolators? We're gonna go 245. We're gonna go 255. We're gonna do 235 isolators and see what.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, pulleys.
Yeah.
Pulleys.
Yeah.
To see which one, if it makes a difference between a 245, 255.
We can run ice water. We can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Ice water, E85, all that's good.
Yeah. And we just heard back from what's called. I want to say what's it?
Brian, Brian's in the house. I've known Brian since way back in the Wisco days and stuff.
Brian, he's the golden child. He's just a sweet guy.
I've run the Pro LS cams. I like them, Brian. Every one that I've tested and I've done the videos on, they've always worked pretty well.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do air intakes. We're gonna.
Yeah.
It's gonna be full. It's
Yep.
gonna be full. And I'm gonna be happy to be out there with my man.
So Jim has a question on compound boost. He wants to know if it's worth anything. And the thing that I will say about compound boost and as an absolute thing, the supercharger is kind of in the way. So if you want to make lots and lots of power and you have a turbo or turbos that can support that power level, that's the way to go. And that's what really big power is going to be like. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you have a big turbo and you're wanting to improve the spool rate of that turbo, the NA motor is not going to do that as well as a supercharged motor will. So let's say you have a 300 horsepower NA motor and then you add a blower to it and now it's a 450 horsepower supercharged motor. The response rate of the turbo is going to go up dramatically now that you have the supercharger on. So it can help you, which is what Lancia did with their Delta rally cars and other people have done. So it's not like the ultimate form of boost, but it does have its place and it works very well. And plus, like I said, the reason we do everything else in the world is because it's cool.
And to say that she did it.
Exactly. So when somebody says, "Hey, Richard, have you ever tested?" before they even finish their sentence, I can say, "Yes, I have."
Exactly.
So Richard, I noticed this was a while back videos when you were testing the eBay turbos. What is your opinion on those?
I can tell you that all of the eBay turbos that I've ever tested, like I have a GT45 that I got from the guys at DNA, which is one of the sources from eBay, and I've had it for, I don't know, it's got to be like 8 or 10 years now. And I've run it on, I'm sure 10 different engines, and we run it, and then when I'm done with it, I just take it and throw it on the ground, and then we go pick it up the next time, and so it's not like it's put in a velvet case and put up on the shelf, and it's just really just kicked around, and it's worked perfect. And the same thing with the CX Racing turbos. If you look at way back in 2010 when I did the first Big Bang motor with the guys from Hot Rod, those 76 millimeter turbos are still alive. And so that was in 2010 or right in the 2010 to 2011 changeover. So all of the ones that I've had have always worked, and I've only ever had one turbo go bad on the dyno, and it went out as soon as we started the motor up. So something was wrong with the machining or whatever was going on with the turbo, it immediately locked itself up. And before I start any of those turbos, and I think that this probably helps with the longevity of these things, is that I always take and I squirt, we have a squeezy bottle, so I squirt oil in the turbo and spin the shaft and spin it and spin it and spin it until oil's coming out, and then we hook up the oiling system. Because if you start up the motor and it has exhaust flow before it gets oil flow, you'll get a lot of like bearing and impeller speed, and you'll have no oiling in there. So I like to give it a chance and kind of break it in before that, because you have no idea how long that turbo's been sitting, because if it got shipped over from China, how long it was there, how long it was in the boat, how long it was in the receiving warehouse and all that. So you just don't have any idea. So I like to give it a and with stuff stacked against it, so it's pushing on the thrust bearing. You just don't know any of that stuff. So I like to try to give it a good chance, a good fighting chance, and I've had nothing but good luck with them.
You know what? I bet you that's probably the reason why you had good luck. You like pre-lube it.
We're not going to be nice to it, so at least we're nice to it at the beginning. We'll buy it a drink first, and then, Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, what are those price ranges on those?
Well, that GT45 turbo that we use basically on everything, I've run that on everything from the little Honda all the way up to a big block Chevy. And that's about a 700 to 750 horsepower turbo, because that's kind of how I rate them, is we choose the turbo based on whatever power output we want. So that turbo is about 700 or 750 depending on what motor it's on, and that one cost $163.
Wow. That's
so
crazy.
It really, people don't realize it really is a good time to be a performance guy, because I can remember thinking about trying to do turbo stuff like to my 5-liter Mustang, and there were Car-Tech kits, but all that stuff was like $3, $4, $5 grand, and back in the 80s, that was half as much as I paid for my car. So it was not something that was ever going to happen for me.
Well, let me ask you this, Rich. So if you said that turbo will cost about, like you said, like under $200, right?
Yeah.
Now, to have the entire setup, what are we looking at as far as, let's say you want to, like have that turbo on, I don't know, like let's say a regular, small block or something like that.
Well,
what do you think a person would be into?
Oh, wait.
Oh, go ahead.
Go with a Cadillac 425.
There you go.
Well, I have a Cadillac 500, so I'm very familiar with those motors.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I have a 500 that I did a bunch of stuff with Courtney and the guys from the Cadco out there. So we did a bunch of stuff together. You can easily run a turbo with any sort of exhaust system. So if you take your stock exhaust manifolds from whatever engine, from your Cadillac, we use the LS stuff, from a small block Chevy, from a Dodge, whatever it is, you route that exhaust to some sort of Y section that comes together to mount the turbo. And where that is going to depend on what chassis you're putting it in. So wherever that will fit. You route that together. If you can weld, that's going to be inexpensive. If you have to have somebody else do it, it's going to be more expensive. You're probably going to spend more money on the aluminum tubing and clamps and things that you need than you will on the major components. So you have the turbo, which is anywhere from $150 to $250, let's say. And then you have some kind of intercooler. Intercoolers, like the turbo, are very cheap. They can be as little as a couple of $100. But then you have lots of aluminum tubing to connect the turbo to the intercooler, and then the intercooler into the throttle body or carburetor or whatever it is you're doing. For guys building turbo kits, obviously they have other things that they're going to need. They're going to need, if it's a fuel-injected car, they're going to need bigger injectors. So you have to go with decapped injectors, very common, or an 80-pounder. The Deca 80-pounder is fairly common and fairly inexpensive. Some sort of big fuel pump is going to be necessary. My guess is, I'll bet, and I was going to do a video on this. I was going to do 1,000 horsepower for $1,000. The turbo kit that you could put on, and we would pick an LS because it's the easiest one. But I think you could make 1,000 horsepower for $1,000. You'd have to do some of the work yourself. You'd have to do some of the welding yourself. But the parts are not that expensive.
Even if you have to farm out the welding, you're talking about like $1,200, $1,300.
Yeah. For like less than $2,000 easily with all of that done.
Well, here's another question. Now, you said you do the LS, particular LS would you go with? The multitude.
It doesn't matter, because the nice thing about the turbo kit is it would work with any LS, because the exhaust manifolds bolt on the same way. So it would work on a 4.8, a 5.3, a 6.0, 6.2, whatever combination that you want. The one that I would get for me is the one that I see most prevalent at the yard, and I go to the yards all the time, and we'll see 10 or 12 LS motors there. You're going to see, or what we see, is a 4.8 or a 5.3. Those are the most common. I think I've seen one 6-liter there. I've never seen any aluminum motors. Yeah, recently I saw my very first front-wheel drive LS4, and it actually had 243 heads on it. So it's again, also the first time I've ever seen 243 heads in a yard. All the other ones are 706 and 862 heads. But the nice thing is, a 5.3 with a cam and springs and a turbo, you can make 1,000 horsepower with that. And that's a ridiculous amount of power.
Now here's another question, real quick. Which heads do you prefer, the square port or either the cathedral?
Well, again, if I'm going to the wrecking yard and getting a 4.8 or a 5.3, I'm going to put cathedral port heads on it, because the rec port's not going to fit. So I only have the option to use a rec port head if it's a 6-liter or a 6.2. In that case, then I would, if I'm going to, the lowest cost way to do that would be to do a factory rec port head, because it flows more than any of the cathedral port heads do, and it will make more power. But if I'm doing aftermarket heads, I probably would pick a cathedral port head.
Interesting.
Tricks of the trade, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, the thing that, not necessarily because I like one head more than the other, but one of the things I always talk about on my shows is that if we select a turbo for a given power level, so let's say we have a 1,000 horsepower turbo, we have an S475, an S480, a 7875 Gen 2 from VS Racing, we have our quintessential 1,000 horsepower turbo. You don't need a lot of other stuff in the motor to have it make that 1,000 horsepower. It's going to do that. If you have a turbo and an intercooler, big injectors, E85, any sort of cammed 5.3, if I had 7 different cams up on the shelves, I could close my eyes, pick one of those things, never even look at it, put it in the 5.3, put springs on it, put that boost on it, and I could get it to make 1,000 horsepower. It doesn't have to be a turbo cam. It could be a nitrous cam, an NA cam, a blower cam. It doesn't matter. The turbo is going to do that. It's just going to take more or less boost to get it there. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to tell people, is that every cam is a turbo cam. So, and not that there aren't better cams to help make that power, but what I'm saying is that if a guy has a motor and he has a cam in it, just add the turbo, man, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah, you're saying the turbo really is the determinant. It's not the
Yeah.
ancillary components around it.
It's like the restrictor plate on a restrictor plate NASCAR motor. It's going to determine what the power output is. If you only have a 700 horsepower turbo, you're not going to make 1,000 horsepower. You can make 700.
Now, what kind of injectors would you recommend? Like, let's say someone wants to do like a 700 horsepower and they don't really care about that 1,000.
Yeah.
Is like a 55-pound, 60-pound injector okay, or?
The one that the go-to one is an 80-pound injector, and a good way to do that math is if you take the injector size, like we have an 80-pound injector, and you multiply that by 16, that will tell you how much power those injectors will support on a V8. That's naturally aspirated. That's naturally aspirated, because we're looking at, and that's assuming that it's a 0.5 brake specific fuel consumption number, which an LS actually does a lot better than that. I mean, we've seen them in the 4.3, 4.4 range, so it will actually make more than that. But then if you multiply that number by, well, we like to be conservative, so we say 0.75, that will kind of tell you what's going to happen under boost and how much power it will support.
Now, what gives you those numbers? What are those numbers? I mean, 16 and 0.75.
Well, 16 is basically, it takes a half a pound of fuel per hour to make 1 horsepower. So 1 pound will make 2 horsepower. So whatever the flow rate of the injector is, if you just double it, and then in this case, we're doubling that and then multiplying it by 8, which is the number of cylinders. You can also multiply it by 6 or 4 if you have a 6-cylinder or a 4-cylinder and get similar numbers. It's just really easy math, and you can do that in your head and go, okay, look, a 100 pound an hour injector can support 200 horsepower per cylinder. So whatever number of cylinders you have, you're like, okay, well, I can make this much power. And then we know that, oh yeah, we have way more injector than we're ever going to use, so we know that that's enough. If we have a 25 pound injector, it's only going to support 50 horsepower per hole, and that's only 400 horsepower on a V8. So that's not very much.
Okay, now that works. I would imagine that works also on superchargers and everything, right?
It works the same. The one thing about that guys don't realize about the supercharger is that it doesn't work directly for the power output, because a supercharger also costs power. So it takes, for instance, I've seen lots of blower dyno testing. The guys at Kenny Bell have a blower dyno. They have a 500 horsepower blower dyno. So they can run the supercharger at speed, and they can measure the amount of airflow that goes through the blower at any given blower speed and boost level and output. And you can have, like, for instance, on some of these Roots blowers, you can have 250 or 300 horsepower worth of parasitic loss on the blower when it's spun all the way up at 20 pounds at 20,000 RPM. So the fuel has to be there to support that, even though you don't see it on a dyno, because it's there. It's just that it's not being used to motivate the car. It's being used to drive the blower.
Okay, now what about spark plugs and gapping? Because I got some NGKs up here for my LSA.
Yeah, NGKs are good plugs. We use. I'm less concerned with the manufacturer of the spark plug. Although there are some that I won't use, like a Splitfire. I'm not a big fan of E3 or any kind of the gimmicky plugs. But a typical NGK, or we've used Denso sometimes only because they gave them a bunch of them. I'm more concerned with two things. One, the heat range of the plug. So if we run a turbo or a blower motor, we'll run an 8 or a 9 or a 10 heat range sometimes. And then the plug gap. So we bring it all the way down on boosted applications to about 19 or 20 thousandths. That way you make it easier for the ignition to fire. If the ignition's having to work hard to jump across that gap, it's not going to do it. It's lazy. It's like, I'm going to pass on this one. You're going to have to catch me on the next round. And it just won't do that.
Wow. We're getting schooled.
Turbos, man. You know? Sooner or later, Richard. I think maybe I will.
Turbos are good stuff, but again, the thing is that guys ask me all the time, because obviously I do lots of turbo stuff. Well, is that your favorite thing? I'm like, no, it's not. The cool thing is that we get to choose. So some guys want all motor cars. That's awesome. Some guys want blower cars with big Roots blowers sticking out of the hood. I can totally see why. You have a jet boat, it's got to have an 871 on it, obviously, with 2 carburetors on it. Twin screw blowers, very efficient, fit under the hood, do all kinds of good stuff. Turbos, obviously very efficient, make lots of power per pound of boost. Some guys don't want to run the plumbing and the heat. They don't want to deal with all that stuff. The great thing is that if there was only one form of forced induction that was the best and everybody loved it and it was better than everything else, there would only be one. But there's not. There's lots of stuff for us to choose from, and all of us get to be individuals and get to make the things that we want.
I think also what it comes down to is, like, simplicity and also looks. Because
yeah.
With a supercharger, I always felt that it was like a set and forget it.
Yeah.
Because by the time anytime you change pools, you got to change pulleys, and that's a pain. And then especially if you're talking about LS, now you got to go and see the dyno. Or
Yeah.
the tuner guy.
But the cool thing about the supercharger, and I remember, I wish I could give credit to the guy that wrote this, and I thought it was awesome, an awesome description, is that the supercharger sits down in the V of a V8 engine where God and nature intended it. And I thought that's like perfect. That's just awesome. And I wish I knew who wrote that, but whoever did, I salute you, because that's an awesome description for a supercharger.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. But the turbo, if I was building a car flat out just for a track, straight quarter mile, I'm hitting the turbo because it's so tunable.
Yeah, and it will ultimately make more power per pound of boost. The one thing I can say is that I do like symmetry, and it's one of the things that I didn't like about, like, I drove around with a Vortec on my Mustang forever for, I don't know, 85,000 miles. So and it worked really well, and it never let me down, and it was always awesome. But I didn't like the fact that when you lifted the hood, there was a Vortec on one side of the motor and there wasn't one on the other side. I wanted there to be two of them so that it looked symmetrical, so that it would be, just would look cooler. I didn't need it. It made more than enough power, but I just wanted to have that visual appeal.
Well, I got a question from Brian. He wants to know about coils. Can you comment anything on millisecond dwell?
There are a lot of questions about coils. Can you comment on millisecond dwell? When we set up, that's the one thing I like about running the Holley HP management system that I do. I'm not a tuner, but I use that a lot, and it's really easy to do for me to do the tuning at wide open throttle because it takes about 5 or 6 pulls and then it's all done. Doing the drivability is a whole different thing, but one of the things I like about that Holley is we can adjust the dwell time on the coil. And for us, we run 4 to 4.5 milliseconds on the coil, and that seems to produce enough spark. I mean, we've run more than 1,500 horsepower and 1,300 foot-pounds on the stock coils. So it's all I can tell you is when we do that with a tight enough plug gap and that setting on the dwell, that it seems to work and we don't get misfires. And that's just with a stock coil or a stock set of coils that I know nothing about because it came from some used motor that we had. They weren't even new.
See, I'm glad we got you on, Rich, because the whole thing is you pretty much telling everyone that you don't have to go and spend a lot of money to go out and play.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to do it cheap, and like I said, this is a great time to be a performance enthusiast. There's never been a time nobody talked about 1,000 horsepower or motors when I was growing up. That was, we say that 1,000 is the new 500, and I think probably we're going to get into a point where 1,500 is going to become the new 1,000. But if you think about a guy that had a 500 horsepower streetcar, that's pretty fast. And if you make that 1,000, all that happens is now I don't have traction even at 150 miles an hour, I guess. It borders on the ludicrous.
And even with the LS, like you say, you find most of your engines in the salvage yard. And
yeah.
What you said, the 5.3s
and 4.8s, yeah.
Because at one point you used to be able to find. Well, my favorite LS engine is the LY6.
Yes.
You find those all over the place, and even now, like at this point. You find that the engines have like 300-400. Now, for testing purposes, they're really good.
Yeah.
You're doing the right thing. But as far as someone going into a junkyard trying to pull out an engine, let's say you get lucky enough to find a 6.0 and it has 200,000-300,000 miles on it. Sure, you can put that engine in there, but you're going to be a little nervous.
It's just broken in.
Yeah. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a video because I went out and got all the parts. I'm going to test out the LS Pro stuff that Summit has.
Okay.
It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
And because what's happening is, like I said, you don't want to go and put that 100,000 mile in your engine and worry, because I'll be nervous. I won't take that car anywhere.
Yeah.
Without what's it called, triple head. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go and get the block. I'm going to have it machined, everything like that, and I'm going to point. This is the cam. This is the connecting rods. Just do it from soup to nuts. Rotate mask. I'm going to use all LS Pro parts and Pro LS parts, and we're just going to see what happens. We're going to take it to Dyno, and we're going to see what kind of numbers we push, and it's going to be a cool video. Yeah,
that's.
I might have to send it out to you to get Dyno.
I like that. I like their Pro LS stuff. I have some of their stuff for a 5.3 that we're putting together, and I like it. And I really like that LY6. That's the one that we made 1,543 horsepower with, and I'm surprised that motor's still alive. I've run hundreds and hundreds of runs on that motor at the 800,000-900,000 horsepower range with that motor, and it just says, "Look, I'm going to be here forever."
It's a cast aluminum LS3 aluminum heads.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong, man. I mean, you just do a simple swap, man, and you're at that 500 range with those.
Oh yeah, easily. Just put a cam in that, and it's more than that. Yeah, they're good.
But yeah, so that's the plan. Looking forward to it, but we definitely gotta get together, Rich.
I'm ready.
I'm gonna tell people something that I know about you that no one here probably knows. All right, this man, he hunts.
All of these guys know.
Well, these guys probably know. I didn't know that this guy traps snakes. We were out to dinner.
Yes.
And yeah, he's a snake. He's a snake lover. He catches and release.
Yep, I'll catch and release. I've been catching snakes since I think I caught my first snake at 4 or 5 years old, and I've been fascinated ever since. Like every year now, I've been for a long time. I was doing a snake log, so I would detail what they were and how big they were and where I caught them and what the time of day and all that stuff was, like I was doing some sort of research, but I was the only one that was looking at it. But I would catch, I normally catch 100 to 110 of them a year. The problem is, especially where we live, most of them are rattlesnakes because we see more rattlesnakes than anything else. I'm going out not to find those because, they're not any fun. I mean, they're kind of grumpy and they're defensive and they rattle and they say, look, I'm going to bite you, leave me alone. But we catch those and we film them and then we let them go. What I'm going out to find are the good snakes, like king snakes, which I love, is my favorite one. That's the ultimate catch for me. We only see 3 or 4 of those a year. We see lots of gopher snakes, sharp tails, ringnecks, garter snakes. And I always try to look when I go somewhere else. Like I was driving up to Reno and I was coming back and I just stopped off along the river and caught a water snake. I was just walking down, being in nature, stopping and being part of all that. And I'm like, hey, that's a little water snake on there. And I reached in and got him and took pictures of him and stuff. And then we just let him go because, like I said, I like them. It's just something weird about me.
What can you tell me about copperheads?
They're beautiful, but they're.
I'm thinking of relocating to is known for copperheads. I just want to know what I'm in for.
I can tell you a couple of things about snakes. First of all, snakes are not aggressive. Regardless of what somebody tells you about snakes, snakes are only defensive. If you look at the situation where you walk up on a snake, you're big. You're 5, 6, 7 feet, whatever you are, and a snake is really small. And so everything that's out in the world is trying to eat a snake. They're fairly low. I mean, they're not as low as a mouse or a lizard is that they're going to eat, but in the grand scheme of things, they're fairly low on the food hierarchy here. So what they do is go, oh no, there's something big here trying to eat me, and the first thing that they'll try to do is get away. If you give them access to getting away, they'll get away. If you corner them, then they'll get in a defensive posture and hiss or strike at you. Because all they're saying is, hey, look, leave me alone. I'm scared. I don't want you to eat me. That's all that they know. Copperheads are beautiful, and they're a lot like rattlesnakes. They're not going to chase after you. They're not going to come into your house. They're not going to do any of that stuff. If people find them, it's normally by accident. Like when I go out and look for snakes, I'm out in the wilderness by myself. But I have to actively seek them. I have to go lift up rocks, lift up logs, be in places where I probably shouldn't be. And obviously I'm very careful because the last thing I want to do is get bit and having to spend time in the hospital. But we have to actively seek them. And I'm out there a lot, and very rarely do I ever run across one. And I do catch the snakes barehanded. Somebody's asking about that all the time. Very rarely do I run across a snake that's just out in the open. Sometimes you'll find them sunning themselves, or the stars will align where you guys will intersect. He will have been crawling across a place where you happen to be walking, and you will meet, and and then I will catch them. But that's very, very rare. Usually I have to look for them to find them, and that's me, like I said, lifting up boards and tin and all that stuff to try to find them. It's very rare that people run across them. And if they get bit, it's usually because somebody steps over a log or a rock and the snake is on the other side, because they like to be in an area where they can get a little bit of sun sometimes, depending on the temperature. A lot of people don't realize they don't like hot weather. Snakes don't like hot weather. They have to they can't thermoregulate, so that their body temperature has to be maintained within a certain range. They don't like to be too cold, they don't like to be too hot, because if they get that, then they die. So they'll be in an area where no, they do not like the heat. If you put a snake in 100-degree temperature, he'll die.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't like it. But they like to be in an area like right under a rock where they can be out just a little bit and the prey can't get them, and they can also move in and escape. Somebody steps over that rock and they step down right by the snake. The snake says, "Oh, something's trying to get me," and they strike at it. So, if you're not walking in the wilderness and looking for them, the odds of you finding one are going to be pretty rare.
Yeah, I was watching a video about this, and the guy had said, kind of the same thing. He said, humans really aren't in too much danger. And he says, and even if you do get bit, he says it's not really, it's not like a rattlesnake bite. He says, but your pets, he says, your dogs and cats, if you have them out with you on a trail, they're a lot more susceptible to being bit. And he says, but usually dogs fare better with the bite, and it's just like a dose of Benadryl, and they'll clear up.
Yeah, as long as it's a big enough dog, and then they don't have a problem. The problem with dogs is that the way that they approach something is with their nose, and the snake. That's also the way that a wolf or a fox approaches a snake to eat it. So their first reaction is to strike at that. And I take my dogs with me all the time. Because we had a ranch that we would go to, and they would get to run up and be dogs and chase squirrels and birds and turkeys and everything, and that we never had any problems because I would make sure that they would stay away when I was going to an area where I figured that there probably were snakes. And like I said, we never ran across any out in the open where they were in any danger.
Wow. So have you ever been bitten?
I've been bitten a lot, but never by a rattlesnake. I don't want that to happen. Yeah, king snakes and gopher snakes and those kinds of snakes, I just pick those up, and then a lot of times they will turn and try to bite you. Again, not because they're being mean, but they want to get away. And then usually what happens is after a minute or so, they just go, "Oh, this guy's not going to eat me." And then they just calm down, and then they're like pets. Then your hand is warm, they like it, and then they're happy to be there. Some of them, different snakes have different personalities. Some of them are like aggravated the whole time, and a lot of that has to do with temperature. If you're catching them when they're hot, they're going to be more aggravated. If you catch them when it's cold, like it's 60 or 65 degrees outside, and they're sitting somewhere maybe trying to get some sun, you pick them up, sometimes they don't even move. Same with rattlesnakes. They might not even rattle because it's too cold. They don't move around a lot. They're trying to conserve their heat.
You say king snake, are you talking about a cobra?
No, a king snake. It's like a California king snake. It's black and white banded. They're the snakes that eat rattlesnakes.
Thing to do is approach them with a CO2 extinguisher.
that would definitely stop them. Actually, the best thing to do is if you walk up and see a snake is just walk around it and go on about your business and let them do their thing.
So what you're saying is we can't shoot them?
Yeah. People do that all the time, and I've had people tell me how tough they are. Yeah, we went rattlesnake hunting. I'm like, that's you and a shotgun and a rattlesnake? I said, that's really not very fair.
Yeah, Lewis, that's a small target, man. It's slippery and moving.
That's why you use those. They use those CCI bird shots. Guys use a lot of that for snakes too.
Yeah, that would definitely do it.
Yeah. Again, a person getting the better of a snake is 99.9% of the time. People run them over and do all kinds of dumb stuff.
Oh man.
Yeah, some my wife does not like them. She hates them, and so whenever I bring them home,
Dog than to mess with a snake.
Yeah, right.
yeah, I used to bring them home, and we would take them to the school so that the kids could see them.
So how long would it take for them to be like a pet? Let's say you found one of those snakes.
A minute or two. As soon as most of them that I've caught, as soon as they realize that you're not going to hurt them, then they still kind of usually want to get away, but they're never going to bite you. They don't do that anymore. They just crawl around. Oh yeah, we set them in a container that has holes and stuff in it. Like I'll bring one home, and we'll put it in a container, and then I'll take it to school to show the kids at school, and then I'll take it back out to where I caught it and let it go. And after the initial catch, it will never bite anybody. Well, I mean, it might bite somebody else if they were smacking it or something, but they would never bite. Well, I don't know that they remember me, but the problem is when you take them to a school and you're showing a bunch of kids, the kids get all excited about it, and they're like, you don't want to like put your hand right up on their face, because then they think again something might be trying to attack them. But I just holding on to it and in a non-threatening posture, they're not going to bite anybody.
I don't want to take that chance though.
And again, a lot of that is confidence. It's just like with a dog. If you see a dog out on the road and you're the one that's in charge, you're the alpha, the dog knows that. When you're not, the dog also knows that. And so I'm not afraid of dogs. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of sharks. I'm just nothing, I guess.
Sharks?
Yeah, I've been shark diving too.
See, white folks.
Exactly. Exactly.
My wife, man, she's white, and she's always trying to pet something or touch something. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
it's gonna eat you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a good shark story. I was we went to Mexico. We went to Mexico and we went on a shark dive, and this was when we were in Cabo, I think. And they drove us, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 hours away from there to this little tiny fishing village. And when I say it's a fishing village, it's like one shack where they make food. Everybody there shares the same trailer to load their boat back into the water. And it used to be a fishing village, and then now it's a diving village, because they want to preserve it now, because after they realized that people are doing diving, that this was a better commerce for them, they started doing that. And so we go out, this guy's going to take us out to a sunken ship, not a Spanish galleon, it's like a munition ship, and it's fairly small. And so we're driving out in this boat, and I'm with the captain. He's a young guy, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, yeah, he goes, we're going to go out. And I said, well, how far were you going? He's like, it's about, I don't know, 1.5 miles or 2 miles out. And I said, well, where's your GPS? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're taking us out 2 miles out into the ocean. And I said, and you're going to drop us down on a boat that's, 10 or 20 feet. I said, how do you know where you are? He goes, well, you see that house right over there and that tree, and then there's that rock right over there and that other tree. And he said, I just triangulate that. And he goes, when I tell you to go down, you go down. And he said, the boat will be right there. I said, and this boat's like, 10 or 20 feet. He said, yeah. I said, I got $20 says that you can't do that. And he goes, okay. He said, but when I tell you to go in, you go in. So we go out and we get to the point. He goes, okay, get ready, get ready. And he goes, okay, go in. And we dive and go in. And I looked down and I just reached up and gave him the $20 because right below me was the thing. But so we go down and we're diving, and there were bull sharks down there. So as we're diving down, there's like 6, 7, 8 foot bull sharks swimming around this sunken ship. Very cool. The visibility was great. The bull sharks, I can see why people don't like them, and why as the shark's swimming by, I realized that the shark certainly thinks that he's in charge here, and he may well have been. So no amount of my attitude was going to change that. But we do our dive and come back up, and as we're going in, I'm talking to the guy again because now he's my best friend. And he said, you need to come out here in this bay when there's tiger sharks here. He said the female tiger sharks swim here, and they could be 13, 14, 15 feet. I said, oh, I would love that. He goes, yeah. He goes, those are much better. I would never go in and swim with those bull sharks like you guys did. I would only go with the tiger sharks. I'm like, yeah, I notice you're telling me that now on our way back and not when we were going out there. I'm like, oh, man. But it was...
Yeah, he got paid before you went out.
Exactly. He knew, yeah. No, but he was a young guy, and they had been in this area for generations, and it was just, it was an awesome experience.
Awesome.
And now I want to go to a place called off of, I think it's Florida or the Bahamas. It's called Tiger Beach. And so now they have big tiger sharks there and great hammerheads and stuff. And I want to go there, and I just want to pet a tiger shark.
I don't know, Rich.
I know.
So, Rich, these are the fellas these are every week fellas.
Awesome.
We got John, Brian, Jim.
What's up, guys?
How you doing?
Dude, is that a Firebird in the background?
Yeah,
What year is it?
70.
The best year ever.
It's actually an 81 that's made into a 70.
Even better. You're backdating.
All new sheet metal.
That's cool.
Making a 70 the hard way.
They're hard. A 70 is going to be hard to find, though, isn't it? A real one?
If you find one, they're like $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
And you got guy did a half decent job of, you know.
Or they're rusted down into nothing, I would imagine too.
The ones I found that, you know, you don't even want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's hard to get. Yeah, 70.
with my race car experience, it was a lot easier to go to National Parts Depot and
There you
buy a
go.
bunch of China recreation parts.
That's perfect. Just build your own.
Throw away everything and just mount it all up.
No, that's perfect.
Hey, Rich, before we get too carried on, I had a question. I saw that you were born in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Did you grow up on the East Coast, and did you hang out on this side for how long?
No, I was actually born in Andrews Air Force Base, so I guess technically it's Maryland.
Yeah.
But I was only there for a short time because my dad was in the Navy, so he was stationed there. But we moved back out here. I was probably only there. I don't even know if I was there a year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm in the Silver Spring area,
Okay.
which is in between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and my
Yep.
routes are down around in that area. I was just, like I said, I skimmed through your bio and all your info just so that I can give you a hard time and ask questions. But I was just curious
you
on
totally
the
still
DC
can.
part. Yeah, no, I was just curious on the DC part. It's not a common, when you have that type of, when you're born in DC, there's not very many, there's not a lot of people actually that have that.
Yeah.
If it's on their birth certificate, you know, it's
Yep.
not a big number or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you another fun fact, Brian. I know you didn't go down through my bio, and I'm not ready to pet a tiger shark, but I was born on a Navy base, and my birth certificate is a U.S. Navy issued birth certificate with a seal, and the DMV wouldn't accept it for proof of birth for an enhanced license.
Nice.
What are you kidding? Yeah, I said, you kidding me? This is like a U.S. Navy government seal.
How more official can you get?
I said, you can't get any more official.
Yeah.
You know, like if I was born in a Pentagon, maybe, you know, who knows? But
Yeah.
I said, no, you need the old black and white birth certificate that everybody. I've never had one of these my whole life. This thing has done everything.
You got to go to Kinko's and make it black and white, and then they'll accept it.
You know, the New York birth certificate is that just that black and white looking.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
It's
that's why.
crazy. It's crazy that you say that about, you know, official documents and stuff like that, because they don't accept, you know, like my mom wasn't born in a hospital, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, you know, when you still have people that don't have that type, you know, you just
Yeah.
have some piece of paper that they've written down that this day you were born on this date, you know, and
Yep.
people look at it like, how can that be a legal document or whatever,
honor of
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they only know one thing. It's like when you go into the auto parts store, they only know year, make, and model. I'm like, no, I built this supercharger and put it on a different motor, and it has a whole different assembly on it. So we're not going to talk about year, make, and model because I don't have any of that.
exactly.
Right.
I go through that all the time when I have to go to the auto parts store to get something, because this car's a big block Chevy in it
Yeah,
and a turbo 400. So anytime I have to deal with somebody that's sitting in an auto parts store, this is a 1971 SS396.
you're perfect. Well, you know what the system is now, and you know how to work it, right?
You know,
I worked at a speed shop, so I had to get around that.
There you go.
About that a long time ago. I learned it back in the 70s. With the Pontiac I had and still have, I put a Chevy engine in it, but you know, you couldn't get Pontiac parts back then. Dealership stuff was, you know, this is going back to the late 70s, early 80s. So I said, hey, I just started ordering stuff for a big block Chevelle. And
Yeah,
it fits. You know,
exactly.
bingo, bango, all done. But yeah, you got to know how to work the system. That's exactly what it is. So, speaking of Fords, here's our resident Ford guy.
There he is.
I do like. I'm a Ford owner.
The other resident Ford guy, I should say.
Yeah.
Nice.
Vince.
Hey, Vince.
Eh, not a whole lot, guys.
Come on, Vince, man.
Richard.
I'm in trouble now.
You had to squeeze a 550-inch Ford to get 1,000 horsepower?
I've never made 1,000 horsepower with one of those. I'm trying to think. I don't think I have. I think we made 9 something with the TFS A460 headed deal. I think that's the most that I've made. I don't remember doing 1,000. I may have, but I'm just not remembering.
The video was the one where it was the comparison of the Ford versus the 455 versus the 460.
Okay.
And then when you did the Kazi head, which the compression was a little low and some other things, and we didn't think that the intakes were compatible for the Chevy versus the Ford, and
yeah,
but I don't know. I could be rude and say something, but I won't. But I did want Terry to go ahead and admit in the video that I sent him of yours, where you admitted that the LS was, kind of a copy of a small block Ford, and I don't know, Terry.
Where I admitted that. Well, I probably said I have no idea, because I don't understand what that myth is. I don't understand why people are arguing about that.
Well, I mean,
all I know is who has it now. I don't know where it came from. As far as the origin, like there's a myth that Ford cast on the LS platform.
That it was offered to them first. So I don't know any of that stuff. I don't know any of that history. I don't know any of the. I don't even know why people would argue about that. Like why does it matter?
If they passed on it, that means they're stupid.
Why can you put an LS head on a Windsor block?
Because they have similar bore spacing? Is that why?
Bore spacing and bolt pattern?
I gotta see this. I'm not sure that it can. I gotta see it.
No, I think people have done that, right?
Sure, it's been done many times before.
So, but my question wouldn't be whether or not that fits on there. My question is, let's assume that your conspiracy theory goes all the way in that direction. Let's assume that somebody copied something, or that something is very similar. But why does that matter, though? I mean, I don't understand what the thing is.
Well, it's just a little friendly ribbing between Terry and myself.
Oh well, no, then that's totally worth it. If that's all you got to tell me. If it's you putting down Terry, then count me in. I'm all in.
I've had Mopars, I've had Oldsmobiles, I've had Pontiacs, I've had Chevys, I've had Mustangs. Right now, I happen to have 3 '66 Mercury Cyclones. 2 are 2-door hardtops, and 1's a convertible. So
those are good cars.
One headed 466 for the 2-door, and then I've got an S-Code 390 that I'm going to rebuild for the convertible. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the last one. So
I like those cars.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that.
Okay, does anybody here have? Here's what I'm looking for: 429 Super Cobra Jet heads. Who has a bunch of sets just laying around?
I'm a little light right now.
Yeah.
I think Evan Smith has a set.
I mean, I would pay $300 or $400 for them.
What castings are you wanting?
What we want to do is I want to build a replica of a 429 Cobra Jet or Super Cobra Jet. So we want to build the motor, run it on the dyno, show people what it did, and then I can give back whatever thing that I borrowed for to make this motor. I did it with the Boss 351, the Boss 302, all the DZ, the LT1, the L76, all of those. And I want to do it to the 429, to that Super Cobra Jet one. I also have a Buick 455 Stage 1 going together, and an LS6, and a 396 375 horse motor going together.
I'll ask around between a couple of the engine builders that I know, and some people that I'll check with my buddy in Vegas and see if Benny knows if he knows anybody out there that might have something, or I'll check with Philip and a couple of the other guys that I know that might have that kind of a cylinder head that they're looking for.
Okay. Yeah, we just need a stock set. We found some that guys have ported and done lots of crazy stuff with. Unfortunately, I just would rather have it just be stock, so we could put it on there and go, hey, look, when Ford built that, this is what you could have expected, and here's how it compares to some of the other stuff that was out at the time.
I'll talk to my buddy Evan because he's in the middle of building a Wood Brothers Talladega Cologne car for the street.
Oh, cool.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a 427 side oiler though in the wood car?
I thought it was a 429.
What year was it?
Depends on the year.
Yeah.
I think it's a 67 or 68.
67 or 68?
Early 29.
Yeah.
Probably would have been a 429.
Yeah.
427.
It could be, if it's a 68, it could be either.
Yeah, 67 probably would have been a
I
427. but it was
forget
an
what
8.
year the car is. They found this car and it's perfect for them to just leave the patina
Yeah.
and recreate it like a Wood Brothers car
Oh, that's awesome.
and put it on the street. So it's cool. They've upgraded the front suspension already to like a bolt-in cross-member deal. They
Yeah.
cut away all of the stock stuff and put this whole cradle in it.
And that's cool that it's cool that they're gonna drive it, because we get, like, when I'm down at West Tech.
And they're running like a 6-speed manual
Oh,
transmission
perfect.
in it.
That's what's up. You got to do it like that. I
Yeah.
love the whole patina, old cars because.
Oh yeah, they're not going to paint the car at all.
Nah,
It's
Yeah.
you get like
dirty
$20,000 on a paint job. Nah.
white, red. Yeah, it's perfect.
Put that money into the suspension and the drivetrain
Yeah.
and have fun.
And just drive it. They get a lot of cars in at West Tech that are like SEMA cars and stuff, and these things are, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. Like, they have paint jobs on them that I don't even like to walk near, because it's just way too inviting for me to, like, just walk over and fall and scratch it. And I don't like cars like that, because they don't get driven. They get, you put gloves on them and push them into the trailer, and I'm just like, that's not a car. That's not my idea.
Diaper, gotta clean them with a diaper. And,
Yeah, no, I just get in it and go do donuts and stuff.
But I want to know more about West Tech. How many dyno cells? What goes on over there?
West Tech has
I
two.
watch Engine Masters.
Yeah.
See those shows.
West Tech has two engine dynos. Both of them are Superflow 902s. They have one chassis dyno. They've got a Superflow airflow bench. They have a injector machine. They got a lot and a bunch of lifts and stuff. And they have another Power Mark dyno that they just got that is probably going to replace maybe one of the 902s. So they've been in business for a long time. Like I said, I think I've been going there for 25 or 30 years now. And yeah, it's a nice facility. We just got done filming a few episodes of Engine Masters there. It was a lot of fun. And those guys are, they're good guys to hang out with, because they're real car guys.
Richard, do you like going
I was
to
watching an
the?
episode where, I don't know, Brule blew up one of the dynos or something.
I haven't.
Last year, though, 'cause this stuff is
Yeah.
so far back.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I'll have to ask Steve about it. So, did you have a question? Down at the bottom.
Say, did you like going to the Engine Masters that they used to have, or I guess you're still doing them at UNOH?
I went to the second or third Engine Masters Challenge, if that's what you're talking about, where we all built engines and they were.
Right.
Yeah. No, that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. To give you an idea, the motor that I put together to be in that, and ended up being a finalist in that. I had 450 dyno pulls on it. So,
Wow.
yeah, it took me that long to find, because you get to a point where you try a lot of things, and in Engine Masters, we're all looking for average power numbers. So from this RPM to this RPM, all that matters is average power, not peak torque, not any of that. Just whatever the average number is, that's what you're looking to try to do. So it's a different kind of build. So you find lots of stuff that goes like this to the curve. It makes more torque, it makes less horsepower, and it ends up being the same number. So you find I found a lot of things that didn't work, that didn't improve my average score. And so we really had to try a lot of different things to get the thing up to where it was Bischoff and Kazi and that kind of level. So it took a lot. When I was sitting there talking to those guys when we were at Engine Master, some guy walked up, I only had 3 pulls on my motor. We're like, you're an idiot. There's no way you put together a motor the first time out. Even a guy like John Kazi doesn't put a motor together the first time out and have it be like at that level. Nobody does that.
Yeah, I've got a friend there in Michigan, Randy Malik. He competed with that and has built engines for years, and he said the same thing. He goes, people don't realize when we were doing Engine Masters, he goes, it's not just grab some parts, throw it together, and take it to the dyno. He goes, they're fighting for specific horsepower, looking for numbers.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a lot more work than people think.
Yeah, when I was doing it, you took the average horsepower and the average torque and added them together, and then you have this number of the two of them together. When you did that, the top 3 guys, I think the difference between first, second, and third was 3 numbers. So they're going out to decimal points on the numbers to decide that's how much you're looking for. So it's a lot of absolutely everything.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of first-class engine builders.
Oh, that's
every nut bolt, they know every inch
yeah.
of the motor.
That's why I went there. I went there to learn from those guys, because those guys know. I'm not an engine builder. I'm a junkyard guy, and I count myself as an engine assembler, which is a different thing. That's why it took me so long to try to find stuff that actually works. Because one thing I do know how to do very well is I know how to test. So I can test lots and lots of stuff, and that's exactly what I did to find out what works.
Now, fellas, you got to remember this guy, Richard. He was on Francis' car.
Yeah, you and Chad.
Yeah, I saw you. You were riding a Segway, weren't you? Something like that.
It was not a Segway. It was a hoverboard.
A hoverboard.
Yeah, I still have it. I use it all the time at West Tech.
Yeah.
When I go, because at the end, if you've ever seen any of the stuff that I've done at West Tech, I'll come in and do 10 cylinder heads or 10 camshafts or all kinds of crazy stuff. And by the time I'm done with all that testing, like, it's a mess. And so I got to clean all that stuff up. So having the hoverboard means that I can just jam around to the different places in West Tech and put all that stuff away to get all that stuff cleaned up when you're done. Because you got to do that, man. When you make a mess, you got to clean up.
Man, I just looking at those things, I break my ankle just looking at them, man.
Lots of people have.
Hey, guys, I gotta jump off, but Richard, man, I really appreciate you coming on. And like I tell everybody, you're family now, so you can come on anytime.
Dude, I'm ready.
Hang out. You can come on just to hang out, or if you have something you need to get out to the public, let us know, man. We can get you in.
About motors or snakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. We haven't even got into the American Ninja Warrior stuff, man. We got lots more to talk about.
Okay, well, I'm leaving, but Ray takes over. He's the after party.
All right.
Host. Yeah, he's the after party host. So
I thought this was the hour.
Yeah,
The who, Vince? What was that?
The music hour.
music hour. They talk music.
We morph. We cover everything.
Everything, yeah.
We'll
But
fly
hey,
around
Richard, we'll probably see you out at